And basically, you know, with this, oh, he was saying when they found Hussein, they said that he had $400,000 of U.S. money. What would he want with U.S. debt-based instruments? You know? How do you purchase property as a creditor? You don't purchase? Well, basically, you would be using, and that's what the operative word is. Once you have your legal standing properly executed, you are able to now use bonds and promissory notes and negotiable instruments. You know, this is the only difference why the only people who have license to take our energy and monetize it are banks and brokers. And the closest thing we have as a people to doing that is through using certain IRS processes, which I'm going to talk about later.
Hi, Sister Myra.
Hi.
What if one don't have no credit, never had credit cards or anything, and just have a Social Security and birth certificate? Would you still be?
Yes, everyone has a certain percentage of the national debt. So even if you've been good and disciplined, and when it comes time to the camp, they put your percentage of the debt onto you, and you get carted off.
But what makes that, the birth certificate and the Social Security?
Right, and because you've been operating in jurisdiction B, you haven't done anything. You know, you have to understand when they put all of this stuff in place in '33. They had the case Erie versus Tompkins. And that case, we have to understand, because there was no substance-based money, that case turned the entire judicial system around. And it put the whole country under public policy as opposed to public law. You have to understand, you cannot have any law if you have no money. It's a symbiotic relationship. So this is why they're talking executive orders, codes, statutes, ordinance. These aren't laws because you're operating unlawful out the door. You know, and I was talking about how in 33 with the banking emergency, how the Trading with the Enemy Act no longer included the enemies of America, but it included the American people, because we were not paying down on the debt. You know, it made us an enemy to the country or corporation itself. You know, and so this creates a lot of problems.
You know? My question is, I know you're not the Wall Street, whatever, this advisors, but would you, based on what you understand, if it was you, based on what you understand, would you take your money out of 401k right now based on what's about to happen or something like that?
That's another good question. That's another good question.
You want to repeat that though? Repeat the question for the
Okay. Based on what I know, would I remove my money from a 401k? Well, that actually is a question that I'm wrestling with, and I don't have much time. I would say to anyone, if you're going to do it, you probably need to do it as soon as possible. But you need to have a plan as to where to put it. Are you going to buy foreign currency, gold and silver, different things? But you don't want to just let it sit there, because you know the Amerios are out now. I think I have somewhere on here a picture of what it looks like. And, you know, the North American Union is a merger between Mexico, Canada, and the U.S. And on one of the interviews, somebody asked Obama, and he had the nerve to say he didn't know if it was true. You know, Obama, he said he didn't know if the North American Union was true, and he acted like he had no clue. You know, but you can go to spp.gov, and .gov is a government website, and you will see that it's up and running and everything's in place, and we're moving on. Yes.
Peace, sister.
Peace.
Are there any African nations that we could begin trading with our currency and buy their gold instead of going to these groups?
Oh my God, excellent point. And I was just told by Rashid that we got to take a break in 10 minutes. My fellow soldier brother, he was supposed to be here. I'm going to call him during the break, and he's going to break down what we're trying to do with at least 8 countries in West Africa, because he basically single-handedly is trying to explain to them how best to use their resources and be able to trade with other countries. And they really are looking to do business with us, and hopefully he'll come and tell a little bit of the story. It is phenomenal. And everything is in divine right order. We're waking up, we're making connections, we're figuring how to function in column A. It's been a long process with column A because there's so many tricks and turns and different things.
This is this is important too. I've been kind of mentioned to you before, but for those of us who are making a transition from column B to column A, there's also too some government entities that doesn't want us to have this information to operate and function like this. So sometimes individuals along their travels, whether it's national, domestic, or international, sometimes there can be interceptions or abductions. Right.
Right.
How do we function? How do we contact with
Well, basically, if it's that everything is that administrative process, and I am a stickler for administrative process. And there's steps and stages. You enter it into the public record. You use authentications. Like I think on my last video, I was explaining about my son's case, who was falsely arrested. I put together an affidavit. I got authentication from the Secretary of State, and then on top of that authentication, I got one from Condoleezza Rice with her handwritten signature. For those, when you're functioning in column A, you learn how to access what you need to function in column A. I'm not completely an A, but we're the closest we've ever been. So we're going to take a break. Wait, Jill, question. I'll take one more question. We'll take a break.
Real quick, I want to go back to the national debt. Is it
the natural?
National debt. Is it true certain Arab countries are paying out debt?
Yeah, based on the relationships that they have. But mainly China has been picking up the tab big time. And we have nothing to offer them. The only thing is the labor camps. And I'm going to go, and after the break, I'm going to go into a lot, of that and be more specific what we can do. One of the remedies right now is to be able to access whatever cash that you have and to be able to turn it around into things that have substance, like gold and silver, like, extra medicine or food supply. And I'm going to, because in the list of things on the flyer, I said taxes are the remedy. And I'm going to go into the 1099 and how that works, which is the original issue discount. Because we, through our signature, are providing the only substance, you're allowed, and we're putting it out there to be used in commerce. As the originator of that credit, you are entitled to get it back. And there's certain forms, 1099, 1096, and things like that we can use to get the credit that we put out there back. And when we start to do these things, these are the things that bring down the national credit. Because if we all gave, the Secretary of Treasury $100 million tomorrow, it would have no bearing because it has no value. So the only thing is we can to be able to navigate in commerce to do things to bring down the national debt, and then we'd be helping everyone. Okay. All right, so we'll break. I don't know for how long. I was a little worried in the beginning about the retrograde, because I'm like, it's not flowing the way I'd like to, but I'm happy to see that it's going. The break, I just want to announce that if you're leaving, I do have a DVD that's entitled, I'm Ready to Take Responsibility and Begin to Learn How to Become a Creditor. And it's so much information, it's not on a CD, it's on a DVD. It's all the information that you see here, and that's available for $30. It's everything you can buy, understanding the Constitution,
$30.
UCC education, a trust, everything that you need to begin. It's just the beginning to get the mindset on how to function, think, and behave as a creditor. No, I have that right here. I think I have, 20-something. Yes. Thank you. Oh, good. Okay, welcome back. So, what I was looking for earlier, I finally found I want to bring the point. I'm sorry. I want to bring the point home. This should actually bring the point home about jurisdiction A and jurisdiction B. And it's basically, I try to, I can't because the wires are, it's maxed out. Okay, this I hope is better. So as you can see, the original jurisdiction is the United States of America in the family of nations. And the mirror jurisdiction, which is the corporate United States, the administrative government of the United States in the United States. So the United States is the corporation, which we have to be mindful of. And then these are the different pledges that basically each are functioning under. As you can see, the USC, the different flags. One is a Republican form of government. The other is a federal government, which would be under the democracy. Under the democracy, as I said, it's majority ruled. So which means, if you really think about what that's saying, it's saying that the majority of people are ruled. And they're usually ruled by the public opinion of the media. And this is how the news reporters will come to you. They're like, well, public opinion states this, and public opinion states that. And these are how major decisions are made. So if there's no outcry on public opinion not wanting to deal with the additional debt, then, it's assumed that public opinion is accepting it. As you can see, the different jurisdictions, which is very key to understand how to function in jurisdiction A. I just wanted to give props to Brother Gary Webb-Bay, who's here. Thank you for coming out. He does an excellent presentation on jurisdiction and how important it is to understand which is which. Did you want to say anything, Gary? Any upcoming workshops, anything on jurisdiction as it relates to this?
Not at this time. I'll let you go ahead.
Okay. Okay, I know I put you on the spot. Sorry. But I know that jurisdiction piece, you tear that up. And it's very important to understand, the different jurisdictions and how we cross back and forth unbeknownst to us. And basically, a de jure government, this again is the republic government. And unfortunately, they have us functioning in the de facto government. And in the de facto, you have to remember, there's no money, so there's no law. So in the de facto form of government, basically they have us under laws, ordinance, statutes, executive orders. And as you can see, in the republic form of government, you have to have enactment clauses, which means that these laws would have to be bonded, and they would have to have an enactment clause when it was enacted. But because you have no form of legal tender, they had to create this whole fiction side to function under, because with no money, you could not function on this side. Okay? And also, it also parallels, from a biblical point of view, the Old Testament and the New Testament. And it's like the people are still kind of functioning in the Old Testament. As much as admiralty does have its problems, we have to learn how to function within that system to make it work for us. You see the qualified registered voter, you see the registered voter. Usually when you're registering for something, you're setting yourself up to accept a government privilege, which is going to put you in a more indebted situation. And so, and over here in number 15, we have to realize that, as I said, every step of the way there is a parallel. There's the state of New York, the New York State, the Postal Service, the Post Office. So in understanding this, we need to be mindful as to how we are navigating, that we are going to try through education and knowledge to function as much as possible under jurisdiction A. Now, is everybody clear on this? Any questions so far? Okay. Now, the Trading with the Enemy Act, as I stated earlier, they created a second Trading with the Enemy with the Emergency Bankruptcy Act in 1933. That one enslaved the people. So basically, we gave the gold and silver, and they took equitable title to all of our property and all the lawful form of money that existed. They provided a remedy. The remedy would be the prepaid account, and that you would settle all debts through your signature, and not realizing that when we're filling out these contracts, we're actually settling things, but in a debtor perspective. There's a way to do that in a creditor perspective. But again, none of this was ever told to us. It was never shared with us. And so we continue to function, how we have been taught. And the main reason that I'm doing this is so that we can all educate our children, because they're the ones that's going to have to live down this debt that everybody just accepted through, no rebuttal. Okay, and we have to realize how we are volunteering through our ignorance, and it's a series of comics that I've used to demonstrate this. As you can see, they're shoving this liquid down this man's mouth. And you have the military and the government, the courts, and what does it say? Twisted rules. So they're shoving these twisted rules down this man's throat. And the twisted rules is the whole bankruptcy, not explaining to people what it's about, how to navigate, how to access their prepaid account, and primarily everything is through standing. It's through documenting your commercial standing in the public record, doing what's known as an administrative process, the filling out your UCCs, taking commercial control of the straw man. What a lot of people don't understand is we cannot own the straw man or copyright the straw man because we didn't create him. But because we have a security interest in him, we are allowed to take control of him. And that's all that's being asked in order to become a creditor, is to control your corporation. Because you didn't know it existed, other people have benefited and controlled your corporation. Every time you're filling out anything with your social security number, these major corporations have what's called block grants. And these block grants, it blocks you from using your own credit. I want to explain what happens in an employment situation. When someone's hired by their employer, the employer has them fill out a 941 document. It's an IRS document letting the IRS know, I've just hired this person, I'm paying him $20,000 a year, and this is how much tax credit I'm claiming. So then at the end of the year, the corporations, they don't do the 1040s, they do what's called, I think it's 1165. And in this form, on line 13, they take the cumulative payment of all of their employees, and they are able to get a tax credit. So if they hired 5 people at $20,000, or say at $10,000, that's $50,000 in tax credit that this corporation is now eligible to get. Now, where did this credit generate from? Is anybody with me?
Your labor, your the resource.
Exactly. So if a corporation can benefit from your energy, your labor, the tax credit you created, are you entitled to benefit from it? Exactly. So as I said, on the form that they fill out annually, they're claiming their tax credit of all their employees. So now with the forms, in order for us to be able to reclaim our tax credit, we use a 1040, which is an assessment. We use what's known as a 1099 OID, which is the original issue discount. And, I would encourage people to, get on the IRS website, start to read them, and read them with the mindset of understanding the bankruptcy. Because basically it says in the instructions, it's for notes, debts, stocks, bonds. We have to understand, even though we're using Federal Reserve notes, it already has a lien on it. It also has a copyright on it. This is why people get into so much trouble trying to do illegal things with it, because it's all these hidden adhesions to Federal Reserve notes that we weren't aware of. Okay, everybody with me so far? Okay, so then a 1096 would be used, which is a transmittal document of everything that was in what's the cumulative of all the 1099s. Because for each issue, you would need a separate 1099. And basically, because there is no money of substance, because there is only a signature creates the finances, anything that you have a receipt to that shows that you've extended your credit, because you got to think about what I'm saying, it's the act of extending credit that's creating the commerce. Does everybody understand that? Okay. Like what part of it?
I kind of get it, but
Well, there's no substance. That was all removed in 33. So that whole transaction, when they took out the gold and silver, they put a credit-based form of currency in place.
right, but that statement you made, extending credit creates commerce, I didn't quite get that.
Well, because if we had no credit, commerce would be at a standstill. Because of the energy and the commercial energy and the credits that the people represent is why you have commercial activity.
Baron Rothschild created the system based on a negative currency.
Right. Alex.
Negative currency was established to create debt. Because if there's no gold or no symbol to substantiate transactions, then the only thing that's left is your energy. In trust.
The thing with the Federal Reserve notes, I'm not sure exactly about currency in other countries, but the Federal Reserve notes are literally borrowed into existence. If everybody was to have the ability to pay off all their loans right now, the entire economic system would collapse. All the Federal Reserve notes are borrowed into existence.
Right, based on the fact that you came into existence and got a birth certificate and a social security card. So now that creates, that's the promissory notes that for them to actually go into the treasury, into the bank, and print money and put the bond on you as an individual with interest for you to have to pay back.
Right. And it's even to the extent that the notes in circulation are representatives of the bond number. The numbers on the back of your social are called bond numbers. And those numbers are also a reflection of the Federal Reserve notes in circulation. This is how deep this goes.
Because money is not created, because everything is in bond. What they have to do is they have to liquidate. So in order to, then you have to start understanding the different levels of money. You start understanding the M1 through the L.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Because the L
M1
is treasury notes and bills and bonds,
Right.
which are frozen. But what they do is once they liquidate them, then what it does is they go to the treasury to print the money, and when they print the money, it creates liquidity, and that causes what is called inflation. And then they start playing around with interest rates and inflation and different things of that sort. But it's all created based on the fact that if there's no gold or silver to substantiate money, the only thing that's left is your soul.
Mm-hmm. Teach, brother.
That's it, because then that's when you start getting into the cultic aspect of it. I mean, that's when you start dealing with the spirituality of it. But that's a whole other side. You know what I'm saying? So just to keep it in layman's terms, in terms of how commerce works, the only thing is what it is this is how it's broken down. Commerce is intellectual property. Because the intellectual property is based on my idea of saying that this is how I want a system to function. With our ideas can go against natural law. So if we're going against natural law, then it becomes intellectual property. It becomes a fiction. So if I can get you to, if I can contract you out to participate in my fiction, then you lose your sovereignty.
That's exactly what happened. Teach, brother. Come up here. No, that's excellent. I'm happy to see people see it.
I don't mean to go in.
No, excellent, excellent.
I know him.
So, does war play a part in liquidation? Like the so-called toxic, because they're talking a lot about toxic bonds, and it's beginning to sound like useless eaters to me. Like they're trying to tie in, they're trying to let go of something. So, what does war play a part in that?
Because dead bodies, there's a price for each dead soldier. We talk about collateral damage, war. That's why the body count during the Vietnam War, they wanted more bodies to keep it going because
What
bodies.
plays into it is that they are war bonds.
Yeah.
So the war bond, in order for them to finance the war, they have to liquidate the bond. And how do you liquidate the bond? The only way you can liquidate the bond is by sending troops over to another country and starting a war, and then contracting to private corporations. The government finance the private corporation to keep the war going. So the money that's being circulated in offshore accounts where the money is taken out of the United States. All right, and once the money becomes taken out of the United States, then therefore there is a squeeze on spending, which raises interest rates.
Right.
So that's why they kept signing. That's why they were continuously 800 million for the war this week.
And going up.
Congress and signed billions and billions and billions.
The 800 billion that they're going to create to put back into the system, they have to go to the Treasury to create.
No, I'm talking about the war, because everybody forgets. They keep talking about this Wall Street thing, but nobody's bringing up the fact that Bush kept signing all of these 800 trillion, like 2 trillion for the war, 800 million for the war this week. You know what I'm saying? Like. So
Right, in order for them to do that, is they go into the Treasury, they're liquidating the bonds.
Right.
You have to understand how our money is, and the economy is not based on dollar bills, it's not based on Federal Reserve notes, it's based on goods and services. You know what I'm saying? It's based on goods and services. The system, goods and services, is supposed to support the banking system. The banking system is not supposed to support goods and services. Absolutely. Right? So the name of the game is for you as the individual for them to stop liquidating on you, creating a surplus to perpetuate the debt. That's what we want to stop, perpetuating the debt.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's the same situations that the different so-called third world nations are facing, because they have these inflated loans that you can never pay, and as time goes on, it perpetuates more of your enslavement. You can never come out of it. It's like a spider web. I wanted to talk about the two different forms of slavery that I have here. Where is it? Well, okay, here, two forms of slavery. One is known as the wooden yoke, which made a slave, which they made people a slave in their own land. And this is actually where they're headed for. And then the other one is the iron yoke. This is what happened to a lot of the early slaves that were brought in from Africa, where you transport people off their land and then you enslave them in a foreign land. But what we have approaching is, with this economy, is a wooden yoke, where they're trying to enslave the people in their own land and trying to get them to work off the national debt. Because
What?
wooden yoke. Those are the two forms of slavery. And we have to understand that the Social Security Act was created to track the income from the assets of the titles taken from the people in 1933 and thereafter. So, and we also have to understand the role that Paulson played. Paulson is extremely a key person. Number one, he's the Secretary of the Treasury. He's responsible for managing the bankruptcy. He's the trustee on the Social Security Administration. He's the chairperson on the Board of Federal Reserve. And he also has a seat on the IMF, International Monetary Fund. Okay, this one man. And he also, having all these roles means he sits kind of like in the middle of both jurisdiction A and jurisdiction B. But it depends on how you approach him. And that's why in part of the road to being a creditor, that is who you have to contact to open up your treasury account to have access to your prepaid account, is the Secretary of the Treasury.
Is this speculation, or is it true that he was shot in the beginning of the year? Because they said on the web that he got killed.
Yes.
And then he popped up out of nowhere when this thing fell apart.
Exactly, exactly. I heard about that, and I also had sent out an email. And the person, the website it came from, this person has a history of sending out a lot of accurate information. Some say that, he was in fact killed because he's just, you have to remember, he's in the middle of this in so many different ways.
But when you look at him, he looks like a clone. Like, he looks like
Right.
Bugsy.
Right.
There's no personality or anything in him.
Exactly. Exactly. And also a lot of this money, all of the corporations that I had showed you with how much the CEOs were making, these are all the people that owe, without having to go into it, but I don't know how many people are familiar with the Leo Wanta story, Ambassador Leo Wanta.
$27 trillion.
Right, the $27 trillion that was stolen from him by all of these same people. Okay, and it even went to the court of the International Court of Justice, and they ruled that Bush, Condoleezza, all of them had to give this money back. And there's also international subpoena on all of them. And this is why, they say that Bush had his daughter buy all that property in Paraguay because they have no extradition laws. So all of them, they're like stealing all this money and making a way to get out. Just like the same thing with Enron. They, take all your money, collapse the company, and he's on vacation in some small island somewhere. And this is exactly what's happening. But the people keep accepting. And at some point the people have to stop accepting and voice their discontent. Don't agree to be surety. Surety means an insurance policy. So basically the people are being used as an insurance policy for all of this debt that the United States keeps creating. And we have to say something. And a lot of it too is karmic, because there should have been more of an outrage to all the stuff that's been happening in that region, in Iran and Iraq, with all the children and civilians killed. The American people virtually sat by and allowed this to happen. So karmically, we should be expecting some of this stuff to come back at us.
And overall, the sentiments overseas is that the so-called terrorists, or whatever they want to term them, they feel like they're saying that they won. They're saying that we brought your empire down because the attack on the World Trade Center that was financial warfare. We brought your financial towers down. So 7 years to that day, your financial system is falling. You dig what I'm saying?
That's
so vultures is really at the door.
Exactly.
Yeah. So they're basically saying that, financially we're destroying you because you keep dumping all of this money to fight people that's throwing stones at you, and your system is, you can't sustain yourself. Now you got Russia, China, and all of the Middle East people looking at America now like, what's up?
Exactly.
Yeah, so this is a little bit off topic, but along the same lines. Like, I think one of the huge reasons why Americans are very complacent has a lot to do with what we put into our bodies, and namely, if you drink tap water, fluoride is a big part of keeping people complacent. If you look at governments in countries where they don't use fluoride, people are more likely to uprise against their government. And that's one of the reasons why they use it. They know it's a poison. And that's also one of the reasons why it's in things that the majority of the population use, like toothpaste that you use every single day, drinking water. They're making sure that the majority of the population is poisoned by these things because it makes you lethargic and less likely to rise up when you know things are not the way they should be.
I agree.
More powerful than fluoride. That's the one thing we're all underestimating. It's in children.
Yes,
That's your job.
It's in everything that you can possibly buy in the supermarket, and that's called artificial sugar. That will make you depressed. See what I'm saying? And nothing is more lethargic than that.
Right.
Artificial sugar.
That's what it is. Artificial sugar. It completely destroys the entire body. It breaks you down on the cellular level. Cells are supported by hydrogen, water, and sugar. What it does is it evaporates the water out of all the cells in the body. It decreases the size of the brain, destroys the entire skeleton, destroys the liver, coagulates the blood, destroys the spleen. It makes you retarded. It destroys all of your joy, all of the cells in the brain that causes joy and happiness and that feeling of wanting to do something with yourself. It destroys all of that.
What is that again, the combination?
It's sugar. It's called fructose, sucrose, dextrose, maltodextrose,
Corn
corn syrup. Yeah. They also invented new ones. NutraSweet. Blender. You know what I'm saying? All this stuff. That's what's really, and that's the one thing folks look at. When our ancestors tried to warn us about the white man's sugar, they were killed and called witches. Read the book, Sugar Blues, by William Duffy.
Exactly. And that aspartame is actually ant killer. It kills ants.
Aspartame causes epileptic fits to airplane pilots.
Right.
Donald Rumsfeld was one of the big people that pushed that onto the American people.
Right. But just as we're here and we're having these discussions, you could be anywhere. You could be at Circle of Sisters. You could be, but you're trying to learn. So even though they're having these attacks on us, we still have free will. The Creator has given us all free will. And it's no coincidence that all of these situations are merging together at the same time. The bankruptcy, the whole approaching 2012, Revelations, the fulfillment of Revelations. And basically, we should be at the point where, as the sacred books say, we're coming out of her. We're separate, we're coming to jurisdiction A. And this hopefully should be the goal, now that we've been made aware of it, that we begin to direct our energy, our study, as to basically how to get back to jurisdiction A and keep jurisdiction B at bay. And this is the way to stay out of the concentration camps. This is the way to not be able to fall victim to all of this stuff that's going down. Because as I was saying during the break, they're allowed to do this legally. I don't know if people are getting that concept. Legally, even though it's horrible, it's messed up, it's jacked up, but they have a legal right to do it based on contracts. So we have to take care of these contracts. We have to deal with them.
Well, the key to it is The problem that we face is the fact that we lack financial literacy. Because without financial literacy, you can never, ever, ever manipulate commerce or capitalism. You have to begin to, because you people who's running around looking for Obama to be the president, you gotta get out your mind. All right? Because
Exactly.
the person who runs this system
Exactly.
is Bernanke. All right? The chairman of the Federal Reserve determines the socio-economic status of this country. Period.
Exactly.
So we have to become more adept in understanding the political process through becoming more financial literate.
Exactly.
Greenspan had a lot to do with that, didn't he?
Well, he's still the chairman.
Still
At the
is.
end of the day, they're still binded by a bureaucratic system.
And everything he put in place.
Right. You know what I'm saying? They're not going to deviate from the system. They've been doing this thing for a few hundred years now. You know what I mean? So they are staying the course. All right? We have to become more, because we deep, we smart, we intelligent, but we're emotionally underdeveloped.
Right.
All right? And when we begin to address our own core issues, then we can not just sit here looking at Myra for the answers. We can all be coming with a different component of how we're going to link ourselves to the change.
Exactly.
All right? So, you know, I take responsibility for my actions by addressing my core issues. Things about myself that I know that needs to be worked on. You know what I mean? A lot of us, we claim we can walk on water, but we don't even drink water. Alright? We got to get out of that concept of we are holier than thou, because we are not. We've fallen short based on the fact that we can't even find camaraderie amongst one another. I've been knowing about sovereignty since I was like 18 years old. But I've been nervous and afraid to really step in and delve into it because I don't really know who and what to trust.
Exactly.
Right? They just had a thing up in Harlem the other day. Brothers is attacking another brother. And at the same time, ain't nobody, the only black men I ever known to build a nation was Marcus Garvey, Elijah Muhammad, Noble Drew Ali, and Dr. York. They built nations. Alright? You know what I'm saying? Everybody else is just running off at the mouth. Alright? You know what I'm saying? If we want to become chiefs, then we have to earn that. Period. But I know I'm not a chief. I'm deep. I'm smart. You know what I'm saying? I got all these other different things going on, but there's still things within me that have been stripped and robbed away from me that I have to realign myself, recalibrate myself to, and you're not going to get it without discipline. All right, that's the one thing. Everybody want to jump into 2012. Everybody want to walk through walls and this, that, and the third, and they can't even control their appetites.
Knowledge of self, man. Knowledge of self. Lesson one. Lesson one is knowledge of self.
Okay. Go ahead,
I
brother.
wanted to ask, you said something before about the goal being to get into jurisdiction A, and that it would still be possible to navigate in jurisdiction B. Can you explain what exactly that is?
Okay, well, basically, once you have set the administrative record of your creditor status, you would have taken control of the trust or the corporation that was created on your behalf. You don't own it, but you don't need to own it. You have commercial control because you are the principal from which that was created. So then you would use that corporation as a vessel to navigate through commerce to benefit the flesh and blood living man. Right now it benefits the corporations because they're using your tax credit. It benefits the state because they're continuing to borrow money against it and trade it on Wall Street. You know, so it benefits, you know, everybody but you. You know, and so that's why, you know, even in presenting this information, and that's why I changed my mind about opening up the question and answers, because this is just a little percentage of what's going on. And I don't want to go too far to the right or too far to the left. I kind of want to assess where the people are at so I can kind of know how far to take this without, you know, talking over people's head or engendering fear. I want this to be used as a platform so people can start to study and start to get in the mindset as a creditor. This is the only thing that will take you out of the concentration camps. And if you're not studying it, if you're paying somebody $100 or $200 to do your paperwork, it does you no good, because you have to be able to navigate as a creditor. And that entails understanding who you are, who they are, what the rules of the game is under the bankruptcy, and knowing that you're the one, you're the battery that's keeping this whole thing afloat. Now, if everybody understood this, we would be telling Bush and everybody what to do. What we're seeing is the result of our ignorance. They are now controlling us. And we're buying it lock, stock, and barrel. But this whole thing can be shifted with just some knowledge and education. And, as Elijah Muhammad says, knowledge of self. Knowing that you are the creditor. There is no substance. So even though I'm saying it over and over, that has multiple layers of understanding or overstanding. And I want people to get it, that there is no money. You are the money. And you have to start to act like it. And if you act like it, this is the whole thing with turning everything over. Even all the madness that they're doing it because we're not taking care of what we're supposed to be doing. As creditors, we're not creating things. We're not putting things, we're basically contributing to creating more debt. And so in the ultimate punishment for that is the concentration camp. I want you to understand, it's not just their fault. This is the message that I want to get off. Through default of our lack of knowledge, total lack of concern, we're in this situation. So at the point that, we start to accept personal responsibility, because it is assumed that if you're using the currency of the day, that you're a law merchant. If you're a law merchant, it is assumed that you understand how to navigate in commerce, that you know what negotiable instruments are. And even though I know there's no forum to teach this, it's, this is why they do this to you, because you are supposed to know these things. A lot of people have never heard of UCC. And if you look on your deposit slip on your bank, it says it right there. Uniform Commercial Code. These are the laws that govern commerce. So these are the things that we need to be talking about in the chat rooms, after the football game, at the barbershop. We have to upgrade our knowledge base quickly, because without doing so, we're going to become victims. It's like being invited to dinner only to find out that you are dinner. So it's very, time is of the essence. We have no time to waste. This is beyond the 11th hour. The only reason this hasn't gone down already is because they're infighting between the Illuminati. Exactly. One wants to do it this way, one wants to do it that way. But, the minute they all get on the same page, it's a wrap. So we have to, begin to take some form of responsibility and to do our part, or even if it's a little part. But we cannot just sit back and be observant of watching the whole country go to hell in a handbasket, because that's what we've been doing.
I just want to say one thing, that the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that there were 3 things that the slave master would never teach us. One was the science of mating, one was the science of war, and the other was the science of business.
Wow. She was saying that Elijah Muhammad taught that there were 3 things that the slave masters would never teach you. One is the science of mating, the other is the science of war, and the other is the science of business. Okay. So, and you can see from just the fact that everything is a trust. Every single thing is a trust. How is this not taught in school? How did your parents not mention it to you? How did you not teach your children? How do you not know what the hell it really is? So, this should send us a shock that, wow, we really need to take a look at this. We really need to take control. We really need to start to understand. Now a lot of companies, people are empowering themselves and they're winning in these foreclosures. On the foreclosures, what's happening is, remember, you created the loan with your signature. They put it in a demand deposit account. Then they have the nerve to what they call hypothecated, where they're taking that note and selling it to other banks or servicing banks. And they're doing this at least 10 times. So that note is getting hypothecated over and over, and you haven't been given any consideration at all for that. But everybody's making money but you. So is it no wonder why we're in the situation we find ourselves in? Because everybody's making money and you're the battery. And none of it is coming back to you. That's what original issue discount is. Return the credits back to the original issuer. So instead of everything going in a circle, it's going halfway and it's staying in that half. It's not coming back to you. So how many years could you keep taking in debt with no way to discharge it, with no way to offset it? So this is where we're at now. We're at the saturation point. The American people cannot hold any more debt. They cannot manage any more debt. So it's either become a creditor or put them in a concentration camp and have them work off the debt. Does this make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Does it make more sense than that? Question, Sister Myra. If someone, a loved one has deceased, can you get back what they put into the system?
Very good
Isn't that
question.
what you give the children when their parent pass away, they get that money?
Oh, the Social Security Administration?
No, not all of them. That's why.
The SSI? Well, I've only heard of one person who's done that, and it was based on collapsing the trust. And you have to also understand that when you do this, when you collapse the trust, you and you're financially rewarded, or not rewarded, but get your money out of it, that you also go into disclosure agreements, that you cannot now discuss it with the debtors. So, but I have heard of a case where the person, okay, making a long story short, before we do the 1099 OID, we do what's called a 4506T. And a 4506T is asking the IRS to send me a copy or a transcript of anybody who's been using my name or my social security number in commerce. And this woman did this several years ago. So at that point, when you did a 4506T, you got from the IRS all of these corporations that's been using your credit. You got a transcript from the IRS as proof that they've been using your credits. So this woman, she did a 1099 claiming all of these credits that these corporations were using. Because you have to understand, if this were to be done in mass, all these corporations that are enslaving you, they would crumble because they would now have to pay back all this money they've been stealing from you all these years.
That's what Henry Ford said. Henry Ford said that. The American people found out about this.
Right.
That would go bankrupt.
Right.
That's what he said.
Exactly. because they have been stealing your credit because you don't even know it exists. So a 4506T is just, it's requesting any W-2s, any 1099s that other people have put in on you, and usually like, Con Ed, gas, what they are using your exemption, so they would file a 1099 on you. So since then they don't give you as much information on the 4506T. They'll give you all your W-2s because they don't want to send you into a state of shock that, to find out Verizon, Con Ed, all of these people have been using your credit, So now they just stick primarily to W-2s. But to make a long story short, she had gotten all her money back, and she had collapsed her trust, and she even went back to collapse the trust of her deceased parents, and she got that money awarded to her. And she moved out of the U.S. in course. It's possible.
4506T.
4506T before you even begin the 1099.
Oh, but that no longer, they won't give me as much information as they gave me.
Right.
And that was when? How many years ago?
A couple of years ago, maybe 4.
Not even for you.
Because we have to understand, as people wake up, they're closing the gates. So that's why I'm trying to document through, because, there's going to be a time that, I won't be doing lectures. So that's why I'm trying to leave a trail and document as much as possible on DVDs. I'm hoping that even when you leave here tonight, you might link up with someone that lives in your neighborhood and begin to start to study and to research and start to connect the dots, because we don't have much time. And once you collapse the trust, you cannot come back, like I said, and share it with the debtors under contract. So if you're going to get out of the matrix, it's going to be pulling yourself up by the bootstraps. I know how hard this is, and I know most people are not going to, anybody who knows you, who knows me, will tell you, I get very little sleep. I'm on research mode, damn near around the clock, while still maintaining a family, working full time, doing the spiritual work with the shrine. So nobody could ever tell me that you don't have time to learn this. That is one thing, even if you say it, I close my ears because I don't want to hear it. If you want to be free, you can be free. So that's why all the research, I'm trying to document it and leave it so that people will pick it up and take it to the next level. Because we've uncovered an enormous body of information. And I've learned from different people. There are a lot of charlatans out there. That's probably why it's so difficult, in the European and the black community. They're using this as a hustle, and they're selling you worthless paper that's going to get you locked up. That's why you should never do anything that you don't fully understand, that you don't have the laws in front of you, that you haven't researched it, and you, if you get a knock on the door, that you could represent it, recite it in your sleep. So it's, I understand. It is much easier to be a slave. But if you're determined to be free, there's a body of knowledge. Anybody who's been studying this stuff, I would recommend Jack Smith is having a lecture workshop this weekend as we speak. A friend of mine is there, and I was up with him at 5 till 7 this morning, just going over the new information that's coming out. So I would advise anybody who's a little more advanced, who's been studying this for a while, to get Jack Smith's video this weekend. He's dropped a lot of information, and the key information, how to navigate through this matrix of commerce.
Myra?
Okay, wait 1 second.
I want to say that we do need to start forming some study groups because as a system.
Speak up.
All right.
Study groups.
As Sister Myra is saying that these lectures that she's having is basically going to be sort of scarce, and that's why she's documenting them and putting them on DVD. What's going to happen is that it's almost going to become treason to be caught with these type of DVDs later on because the information is so powerful. So amongst ourselves, we need to start form study groups and memorize this stuff so we can start speaking to one another about it. Because it's not all about the DVDs, it's not about the paper material, because if you get caught with it, it's going to be considered as treason, and it's going to be scarce.
Exactly.
You're going to be peddling it like, hey, I got this, it's X, Y, and Z. Like, I
Crap.
can't afford that, but you know what it is? We have memory. We need to learn to speak to one another and take the time that we have available to infuse this information and have it walking with us daily.
Exactly.
Because if we don't internalize this, we're going to be sorry at a later point. And we got another generation to fight for. We here for a reason. We communicating here for a reason. We, take a look around. It's not full, but we here for a reason. And the thing is that we're not always going to have individuals such as Sister Myra sit in front of us to communicate this information. So Kwame Ture, Malcolm X, they've always been saying organize. And Malcolm said this about the concentration camps. If you listen to any of the old tapes, he basically said, if you don't wake up to what's going around you, you'll be in the ovens, in the concentration camps, and you try to figure out how did you get here. That's real talk.
Right, it certainly is. And even on one of the DVDs, I have a picture where you can see the gates are turned inward, so whoever is there, you can't come out. And they're now building them with crematoriums, so they can burn the bodies, and it's, easy to get rid of them. So, what the brother's saying is absolutely right. If just your mindset and understanding the scam is your keys to freedom. This is your Harriet Tubman, so to speak. So, I don't want it to just be viewed as a Sunday night, you hear some interesting information, and you go back to sleep. I hope everybody that's here takes this serious and commits on some level to understanding this and getting together with like-minded people. Because it's going to be very difficult. If you've seen a lot of the information out there that they want to get rid of 90% of the population, they have the plastic coffins already. Everything is basically in place. And, I don't know what will it take for people to be into a state of shock and try to do something.
Go back to what the brother in the back was saying. You have to turn your lens also inwards, because it's about self-discipline and really taming your own appetites and really realizing who you are and what your spiritual work is. And yes, you go running and get all the money or this power stuff that we're talking about, but the real power is in you. So we need to realize who we are, and then once you realize who you are, it doesn't seem so big, like this big monster.
True.
And I think that's the biggest problem, because we're powerful. All these people in here, we could have turned this around already, just sitting in this room, if we really knew who we were, or who we are. So I think there's some spiritual work that needs to be done.
Yes.
And we need to look at ourselves in that way.
Exactly. The spiritual piece is very important. That's why even anytime I do a presentation, I have my spiritual stuff with me, because we have to understand it's a war between the forces of darkness and the forces of light. And basically the forces of darkness have been doing an excellent job of playing their role. The forces of light have been sitting on the sidelines, allowing the forces of darkness to push them further and further off the cliff. So, a lot of people are like, wow, you say all this, aren't you afraid, this and that and the other? No, there are two polarities here. And I have a right to bring the polarity of light forward. And there's certain rules that the polarity of darkness cannot stop me. Just like they have certain rules. As the forces of darkness, they have to tell you the truth. The forum of how they tell you the truth, if you want to sleep on it, that's on you. But everything, all the movies, that's where they use the forum to tell you the truth. Because you thought it was a Hollywood fiction, or because you chose not to believe in it, doesn't mean that you wasn't told. Just look at all the movies out here. They're telling you. Everybody in my study group, we feel like we should have wrote the script to National Treasure, because that's how it's been trying to stay on the A-list. It's been, research, we run over here, let's look this up, we go to this library, look that up, and, they switched it, they changed the law. We swear, we feel like we should have been in National Treasure. Because that's how it is, that level of research, that level of trying to decode all of the lies and the deceit and and that's why as I go, I'm trying to leave breadcrumbs, that hopefully someday, one day, people will be like, well, here's a trail, we can go this way. This is the commercial piece, and this is how you stay on that thin line and be able to navigate to the light at the end of the tunnel. So really, we need to be able to take our responsibility. If we call ourselves forces of light, beings of the Creator, we need to play our role. I remember Bob Laws used to say, he was tired of people saying, oh, I'm going to take it to the feet of Jesus. I'm going to take it to the feet of Jesus. And he said, Jesus is like, I've given you a brain and this and that and the other. Why you keep bringing it to my feet? Use your brain and you create your solution. And so we have to realize that, even as Yeshua said, greater things ye shall do also. But we have to understand who we are and be able to embrace that greatness, that we are a reflection of the Creator. So we should not even have any fear with these demons and these negative forces out here, because we need to do what we're here to do. That is what's going to checkmate the dark forces. Standing up, and it's force with force. That's how you get ma'at. That's how you get balance.
Myra, I got a question to ask you. Of course, this is not like, I've heard you talking about this before, but I'm kind of like scared right now, because if I do this, I'm really serious. I got 4 kids too, so I'm not going to go into this and say, okay, let me study something and not try to tell them what I'm doing, because then I'm going to get confused. But when I ask you questions like, okay, say if I'm coming out the matrix, how do you do your taxes and benefit, like if you get married again, signing your name and death certificates and all that stuff?
Okay, even though it's 11th hour, you're in no position to do anything. That's why I document. Everybody should be in study and research mode. Once you're in study and research mode, that's where you get the confidence to go in there and do what you got to do. The 3 court cases that I had, I'm not going to front. When I was in there doing battle with the judges with no attorney, I was nervous because, these people are the master liars. They'll switch it in a minute, but when you're in these situations, the only thing that's going to help you is your knowledge. And the scarier you are, the more that knowledge is going to come up to the forefront. But if you don't have anything to draw on, then you're going to have a problem.
It's just interesting when you mentioned National Treasure too. They dealt with the spiritual aspect also, like the sister was saying, because they mentioned the Olmecs by name. And one of the significant things about that movie, that foundational information they were looking for was in the lost language of the Olmecs, and it was referred to as the most ancient language. So they were dropping everything for us right in that movie.
Well, mostly all of these movies are dropping everything.
What they have done, what they're going to do, or what they're getting ready to do.
Right. Now, what was that new movie, the new movie that's out now?
Eagle Eye.
Yeah, Eagle Eye.
Yes.
I haven't seen it, but they were saying there was a line in there. You saw it?
What they're doing with the self, even with the information technology, Big Brother listening on to the conversation where you're going.
The computer in that movie was designed to destroy the government if they ever got out of line, based on what the Constitution says. So the whole movie's whole point was to try to destroy this computer, because it was going to kill all the crooked politicians because they were breaking the Constitution.
Okay, so
But
that's
the characters
something.
the main characters in the movie, the way they played it, they were for destroying this computer. And allowing the tyranny to go on, allowing the slumber and the slavery to continue.
So why? So they were allowing it to go on, but yet they were trying to destroy it?
They were trying to destroy, if they destroyed the computer, then things would go on as they were. The computer was sentient. It became smart enough to, had a thing built into it where it would kill and destroy the government. It was an artificial intelligence that would destroy the system if it started to break what the Constitution was founded on.
Exactly. And if you notice that the movie iRobot, you know, with Vicky and the computers, like, you know, you've destroyed the stream, this, that, and the other. We have to protect you from yourselves. You know, so this is, you know, so they're dropping it in all of these, every last one of them. You know, especially when you now try to look at these movies with a creditor consciousness, you're going to be shocked. You know, because even The Matrix, it starts in right off the bat, the first one. He says, don't come to me with that jurisdiction shit. You know, jurisdiction A, jurisdiction B.
Written by a black sister.
Yes, written by Sophia Stewart, who has gotten no credit for this. She
won the case,
but she got screwed because, you know, I was, Phil Valentine had introduced me to it, and I was trying to share certain information with her coming from a sovereign perspective. But she was, what do you call not a law clerk, but what do you call it? No, like they help you lawyers, paralegal. So, you know, I find that a lot of times attorneys and paralegal is very difficult to talk to them because I don't know what law school does to them. But it's like a brainwashing, and it's like I try talking to a lot, and it's like they can't even hear you, they can't see it from that perspective. First of all, UCC was optional to take in law school. So that tells you right there we're going to have a problem communicating. Because it's optional. You know, it's not mandatory that you take that. And that's dealing with commerce. But so she, you know, felt that she wanted to go about it based on her training as a paralegal. And, you know, they basically screwed her because the trial went on for 6 or 7 years, and then at the last minute when it was time to settle, the judge decides to come forward and say, I used to work for Time Warner, so I can't handle this case. So how do you wait till 7 years? You know, so now everything was done. You know, so they did all kinds of things, you know, even though she has the copyright. She has all the evidence that she wrote, you know, she was explaining everything. Even the Sentinels, that was the cover on her book.
Right, she copywrote every draft.
Right.
Every draft that she made, just even if it wasn't the final product, she copywrote every part. But Sister Myra, you remember us talking on the phone, and I feel like I say this now, but we talked on the phone several times back, and you remember you talked about going on YouTube, and I said to you, not yet.
Oh, to do it, okay, yes.
Because also too, you know, my brother was saying back to the spiritual side to this. You know, it's not so much that he believes stuff. We got to know when to do certain things at a time. Because honestly, I believe, Sister Myra, what you were just saying is, I'm saying, you know, if I believe you did that at that time, we wouldn't be here listening to you right now.
I agree, but now wait, let me say it was going to be YouTube based on the the 13-week class, and that you would have had to subscribe.
Right, subscribe.
Right, but not, because that is my biggest fear, to be on YouTube.
I understand.
There's only one YouTube video of me, and that's when I was with Phil Valentine off camera.
Right.
So I do not, and I also understand even Bobby Hemmett was the first one to break that down. He's like, you know, he's of the understanding that when you're doing the work that we're doing, that in order for the spiritual realm, the ancestral realm, to protect you, you must stay off the devil's network.
Yeah.
Like, you'll never see me on Oprah. Okay? Oprah would never have me. Okay? No.
But that's what I was saying. When you talked about my heart, I was like, no, that's not spiritual.
No, I wasn't going public, because I realized that most of this information, most people couldn't even handle it, wouldn't understand it, some wouldn't believe it, you know, so it's my audience is a minority.
And those who do know what you're saying, they will come and try to intercept.
Right.
And that's why, even though people would have to pay, people still pay to get the information.
Right.
To find out what you're saying.
But well, that's why actually I've only sold one copy of that. Spirit has told me that I cannot release that yet. So I got the message, and that's why people have asked me about that. And it is so powerful, you know. And when I do release it, I'll probably not be on this continent, which is very short. Okay. You know, because it's So any other questions?
I just had a question with respect to non-disclosure to debtors after the process is completed. What does that mean?
Well, after you've thoroughly established yourself in column A, you've collected the funds from the initial trust that was set up, Sestike and Citus, and you've gotten paid, so to speak, from it, and you've collapsed the trust. I don't even know if I should be saying this on camera, but you're considered crossing over, that you're completely out of the system. You have regained your, how I talked about natural law in the beginning. It's God and you. You don't need a mediator. You know, and now the government itself, they work for you. You have now reversed the roles and put everybody in their proper place. You know, so now when you've done that, you cannot be hobnobbing with the debtors.
When you say debtors, are you talking about debtors under the bankruptcy or debtors that are now debtors to you because you are now in position of credit?
Debtors under the bankruptcy. Okay, I was telling you the last question.
Okay, I'll make it real quick and simple. So being that you're taking everything out of debt, that means you can't get arrested or...
That if you bought the DVD, the CD, well, DVD, How to Become a Creditor, the first thing you want to do when you get home tonight is find that audio file called Collapsing the Trust. And you will not believe what this guy, you're placed on the do not detain list, Interpol, you're untouchable. Okay, untouchable. And this is international. So you'll hear it right from the horse's mouth. You know, being this whole nightmare, the police stopping us, that's done. Pulling us out the car and beating the shit out of us, that's done. He would be done after your status has gone that far. Okay, so that's it.
Give it up, y'all.
I want to thank Brother Rashid and Brother Black Dot and everybody who came out. We got to support these brothers because they are making it possible for people like me to come out here and bring this information, and they make me feel safe, comfortable. They're always looking out for me. So please support these brothers any way you can, because sometimes the turnout was not as they expected today. And Brother Rashid and they're taking a loss. So I actually want to open it up to a donation for Brother Rashid if you can, and I'll start it off. Because I know that, they have to pay out for this wonderful facility, the promotions that they do, so they did not expect the turnout that they got because so much stuff is happening. The Moorish Conference, 3 days, the Circle of Sisters.
Then we right back in 2 weeks we back here, then we back again, we flying Delbert in, pay attention to the emails. Delbert is going to come back on the 19th, then we got Bobby on the 9th. We're trying to do the work, y'all.
Right, so you got to support it. You got to. Because otherwise I would not be here and others wouldn't be here. So we got to, if we can just, take a collection right here for the brother.
It's the old hat trick.
Somebody give me, right?
Thank you.
I thank you, brother. If you're on my email list, send me a list. I don't have that information, but my partner is there this weekend, and the information is phenomenal. The information is phenomenal. Combined with what I'm saying tonight, this information will be like a marriage and but I don't have Jack Smith's contact. There's more liars and con artists out here in this commercial game than ever. So he's one of the people I endorse. Sam Kennedy, if you're using his stuff, be careful. I do not endorse it. I've let him have it several times. And, I've exposed him. As a result, he's trying to take a shot at me on his radio show on his internet, but he couldn't get into a point for point of the issues on his radio. So it's very careful who you get your knowledge and information. Most people are liars. Yes, I am going to say that. They only want your money and they're giving you bullshit. They're not giving you solid research information that you can take this and you can go to the law library and do your own study. Then if there's anybody in here who filed a UCC and filed it on a national form, you may want to rescind that and do it on a state form. Because when you use a national form, basically it's just a notice of a lien. So without an administrative process, it's illegal. And between now and December, they're coming after those people who file like that. So it's very important. So that's why you can't just be buying paperwork. If people want to sell you paperwork and not give you a class, you need to go the other way.
Thank you.
Because the paperwork means nothing without the knowledge of how to...
And investigate, see how many cars and houses all of these guys with this fancy paperwork that they only want $150 for. Find out about that. Because it'll cost you more money. It'll cost you more money to get out the penitentiary or to get your house back than it do spending $50 for somebody to protect your life.
Exactly.
All right? The Roach Motel, $5 for a fur coat, it's done. If you want shoddy paperwork, if you want to protect $1.5 million, $0.6, you can't spend $150. It's not practical.
As long as I've been out here, have you ever heard of anybody?
Nobody. I ain't never heard nobody ever lost nothing or they in the penitentiary with Myra.
Right. Nobody. My reputation speaks for itself because I give the people what I would have wanted when I was searching and desperate, trying to find information.
One word, Myra. Mother.
Thank you.
That's it.
word.
Oh, wait,
real quick.
Brother Gary.
I'm sorry, I didn't say anything earlier. I was trying to just read some of the flow. But everything that everyone said was right on point, and it's a very serious thing. All y'all should communicate with each other, get each other's information, start a study group. Okay? This information, it sounds complicated, and it is to a certain degree, but you have to make it simple. The way you make it simple is by starting with the basics. You need basic materials. You have to have a law dictionary. Because the only reason why this stuff seems complicated is because we're dealing with English. You have to understand, it's a language of confusion, but the language goes back to other languages that make things very plain and simple. So you have to understand the meanings of words.
Etymology.
Right. Etymology, all these things, and everything connects. There's a science behind all of this. There are only 9 numbers. How complicated are 9 numbers? Not that complicated. Everything fits under a numerical system. Okay? So you need to just bring everything down to a very basic level. And if you don't understand something, look it up and then ask a question. Don't assume that you know something, because what we're missing is what we're assuming we already know. Go back and look up the meanings of words that you think you already know, that you don't know the meanings of. And then it will start making sense. It will click. But come together, because we all have individual talents and abilities. And we all have different areas, but we have to come together. So start the study groups. Now, communicate, and I'm serious, communicate with each one in here before you leave and get their information. If you're serious. If you're not serious, it's fine. Right. Go about, we all have to travel our own path.
Some of us are from Philly area, South Jersey.
But if you're serious, get together, communicate, and meet regularly and do these things. I have groups, I have meetings that I do, things that I do as well. You can get my information, whatever, anything that's going to work, but you have to get this information understood. It's not that complicated. You can do it. You can understand these things, okay? And Sister Myra, I know you want to say, I don't want to.
No, it's back to you.
But Sister Myra, the reason why she's here now is because she does research. She didn't just take information and say, oh, this sounds good. Oh, this is what I want to do. Oh, I know, I can feel it in my heart that it's correct. No, you go and you do the research. And that's why she's here now, okay? And you can do the same thing, and then we can all come together and we'll make this happen. We can flip this tomorrow if we want, okay? So I love all of y'all. Peace. Who'd like to see Sister Myra again soon? One subject area that needs to be addressed, and for everybody, is that the way to circumvent bringing new slaves into existence is to stop fucking with the birth certificates. If you know anybody having a child, let's start asking our scholars to give us the technology and be willing to participate with the fiat in compensating them effectively for them to give us that technology, because we could destroy everything if we stop letting them issue the bonds. We create our own. All you need is 2 vital statistics. All you need is the vital statistics. They do their own birth record. But the other one is yours to have. You don't have to sign nothing.
Don't have it in the hospital.
But let me tell you something. I just had a baby 16 days ago at home, and they got the midwives as slaves too. What? Because she tried to hit me with a paternity piece of paper that's issued. It's an affidavit issued to the Department of Health and Hygiene. Why do the Department of Health and Hygiene have to know about my baby? Mental health, excuse me, and hygiene have to know about my child. Okay?
And also marriage certificates too.
Exactly. Under the presumption that I'm not able to fit it.
Even as those who are going to get married, marriage certificates as well. Marriage license.
Privileges.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you all for coming. We appreciate it. Please come out on the
Congratulations on your baby, man.
Brother Abdullah has some books on etymology out there. Abdullah Bey.
I want y'all to know how bad this sister is. 3 years ago? How long ago was it? 3 years ago? 3 years ago, her son, she told him to, some of us know this. At the end of the day, this sister had her sons, he's here. I don't want to point him out. Had all the charges or the charge against their son dropped. Charges. He was at school. It was half a day. Told him on the bus, right away. You know what? She's spiritual.
Looked at the chart.
He was supposed to get on the bus, the school bus, to come back home when he was supposed to. Now I won't say hard-headed, but you know how we do. Oh, well, you know. Let me just chit-chat. He's on the corner with 3 others, doing nothing but talking, getting ready to get on the bus. A little bit late. Cops come around, point the finger at them for something they didn't even do. Charges were what, sister?
He was looking at 20 years.
He was looking at 20 years. Didn't do anything.
The victim said he didn't do it. The DA was still going to
prosecute him. She's thorough. Okay, I was on the phone with her with many other people who were on the phone with this sister. I'm just telling y'all, she's thorough. This brother is fine now. He's going to college.
From the lawsuit that we sued them with, is paying his college tuition.
Okay, I'm just telling y'all, she's thorough about her stuff. She got her own child out when the lawyers wouldn't, weren't going to. He was facing 20 years at 17 years old. He didn't do anything. He was just standing on the street corner. Didn't listen to mom. But you know, he had to go through what he had to go through because then she had to go through what she had to go through for him. I bet you now, he's right on this tip with her because he saw everything going down, unfolding. You know what I'm saying?
More importantly, it wasn't an issue where you have to go outside of yourself to ask someone to prepare anything for you.
Right.
It was a critical situation where a mother was forced to go hit the books on her own.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you put yourself in a position where you have to be in like a legal beagle. You got to learn how to shepherdize cases and all of this stuff.
Right.
When you can circumvent all of that now by making your next step your best step and putting your money out of the cracker system and into your own paradigm. We got lawyers, we got brothers who are engineers, we got master metaphysicians, we got brothers that are Moors, ex-circuit court judges. We got everything right here. We don't have to go outside of ourselves for anything. And with that,
long process with column A because there's so many tricks and turns and different things.
This is my, you know, this is important too. I've been kind of mentioned to you before, but for those of us who are making a transition from column B to column A, you know, there's also too some government entities that doesn't want this want us to have this information to operate and function like this. So sometimes individuals along their travels, whether it's national, domestic, or international, sometimes there can be interceptions or abductions. Right.
Right.
How do we function? How do we contact with
Well, basically, if it's that everything is that administrative process, and I am a stickler for administrative process. And there's steps and stages. You enter it into the public record. You use authentications, like I think on my last video I was explaining about my son's case who was falsely arrested. I put together an affidavit. I got an authentication from the Secretary of State, and then on top of that authentication, I got one from Condoleezza Rice with her handwritten signature. For those, when you're functioning in column A, you learn how to access what you need to function in column A. I'm not completely an A, but we're the closest we've ever been. So we're going to take a break. Wait, Jill, question. I'll take one more question. We'll take a break.
Real quick, I want to go back to the national debt. Is it
the natural?
National debt. Is it true certain Arab countries are paying out debt?
Yeah, based on the relationships that they have. But mainly China has been picking up the tab big time. And we have nothing to offer them. The only thing is the labor camps. And I'm going to go, and after the break, I'm going to go into a lot, of that and be more specific what we can do. One of the remedies right now is to be able to access whatever cash that you have and to be able to turn it around into things that have substance, like gold and silver, like, extra medicine or food supply. And I'm going to, because in the list of things on the fly, I said taxes are the remedy. And I'm going to go into the 1099 and how that works, which is the original issue discount. Because we, through our signature, are providing the only substance, and we're putting it out there to be used in commerce. As the originator of that credit, you are entitled to get it back. And there's certain forms, 1099, 1096, and things like that we can use to get the credit that we put out there back. And when we start to do these things, these are the things that bring down the national credit. Because if we all gave, the Secretary of Treasury $100 million tomorrow, it would have no bearing because it has no value. So the only thing is we can to be able to navigate in commerce to do things to bring down the national debt, and then we'd be helping everyone. Okay. All right, so we'll break. I don't know for how long. I was a little worried in the beginning about the retrograde, because I'm like, it's not flowing the way I'd like to, but system around. And it put the whole country under public policy as opposed to public law. You have to understand, you cannot have any law if you have no money. It's a symbiotic relationship. So this is why they're talking executive orders, codes, statutes, ordinance. These aren't laws because you're operating unlawful out the door. And I was talking about how in 33 with the banking emergency, how the Trading with the Enemy Act no longer included the enemies of America, but it included the American people, because we were not paying down on the debt. It made us an enemy to the country or corporation itself. And so this creates a lot of problems.
My question is, I know you're not the Wall Street, whatever, advisors, financial advisors, but would you, based on what you understand, if it was you, based on what you understand, would you take your money out of 401k right now based on what's about to happen or something like that?
That's another good question. That's another good question.
You want to repeat that though? Repeat the question for the...
Okay. Based on what I know, would I remove my money from a 401k? Well, that actually is a question that I'm wrestling with, and I don't have much time. I would say to anyone, if you're going to do it, you probably need to do it as soon as possible. But you need to have a plan as to where to put it. Are you going to buy foreign currency? And basically, with this... Oh, he was saying when they found Hussein, they said that he had $400,000 of U.S. money. What would he want with U.S. debt-based instruments? How do you purchase property as a creditor? You don't purchase? Well, basically, you would be using, and that's what the operative word is. Once you have your legal standing properly executed, you are able to now use bonds and promissory notes and negotiable instruments. You know, this is the only difference why the only people who have license to take our energy and monetize it are banks and brokers. And the closest thing we have as a people to doing that is through using certain IRS processes, which I'm going to talk about later.
Hi, Sister Myra.
Hi.
What if one don't have no credit, never had credit cards or anything, and just have a social security and birth certificate? Would you still be?
Yes, everyone has a certain percentage of the national debt. So even if you've been good and disciplined, and when it comes time to the camp, they put your percentage of the debt onto you, and you get carted off.
Well, what makes that, the birth certificate and the social security?
Right, and because you've been operating in jurisdiction B, you haven't done anything. You know, you have to understand, when they put all of this stuff in place in 33, they had the case Erie versus Tompkins. And that case, we have to understand, because there was no substance-based money, that case turned the entire judicial, gold and silver, different things. But you don't want to just let it sit there, because you know the Amerios are out now. I think I have somewhere on here a picture of what it looks like. And the North American Union is a merger between Mexico, Canada, and the U.S. And on one of the interviews, somebody asked Obama, and he had the nerve to say he didn't know if it was true. Obama, he said he didn't know if the North American Union was true, and he acted like he had no clue. But you can go to spp.gov, and .gov is a government website, and you will see that it's up and running, and everything's in place, and we're moving on. Yes. Peace.
Are there any African nations that we could begin trading with our currency and buy their gold instead of going to these Jews?
Oh my God, excellent point. And I was just told by Rashid that we got to take a break in 10 minutes. My fellow soldier brother, he was supposed to be here. I'm going to call him during the break, and he's going to break down what we're trying to do with at least 8 countries in West Africa, because he basically single-handedly is trying to explain to them how best to use their resources and be able to trade with other countries. And they really are looking to do business with us, and hopefully he'll come and tell a little bit of the story. It is phenomenal. And everything is in divine right order. We're waking up, we're making connections, we're figuring how to function in column A. It's been a